because conference is your week, a chance to come together, see old friends, discuss new policies, challenge your party leaders, including me, challenge the chairman this afternoon, and yes, maybe to enjoy a drink or two, just one or two. And it is also an opportunity for me to say thank you to all of you, to all the members of the Voluntary Party, for everything you do, week in, week out, night and day, rain or shine, to champion conservative values in our towns and cities, in our villages and in our communities across this country. And I know it's not always easy, particularly in today's political environment, where the return of the hard left has made political debate coarser and more unpleasant than for many years. But everything you do matters so much. We saw that clearly in May this year, when because of your efforts, we saw what we can do. We were able to upset the odds and deliver such a fantastic set of results in those local elections. We defied predictions and defeated the doomsayers. We held on to Wandsworth, Westminster, Amber Valley and Kensington and Chelsea, among others. And we made gains in places like Bolton, Nuneaton, Wigan, and we took back control of Barnet. But they said we couldn't do it. But thanks to you, we did. So on behalf of everyone in our party, let me say thank you. I also want to thank one person in particular, our brilliant Prime Minister, Theresa May. When she appointed me to this job in January, she charged me with delivering a set of local election results that would show our ability to take the fight to Labour and win anywhere in the country. That is what we have done together. And it wouldn't have been possible without the professional and the volunteer staff around our country, around the regions, and in CCHQ. Brilliantly coordinated and led by our fantastic Chief Executive, Sir Mick Davis. Thank you, Mick, for the support you have given to me personally and the years of phenomenal service you have given to our party. Thank you. I also want to thank my brilliant Deputy Chairman, James Cleverly. And my excellent PPS, Luke Hall, as well as our wonderful Vice Chairman, Helen Grant, Andrew Jones, Ray Chisty, Paul Scully, Alex Shelbrook, Marcus Jones, David Brownlow, Dominic Johnson, Tom Pursglove, Chris Skidmore, Kemi Badnock. A phenomenal team with James Morris working on training for us as well. Thank you to all of you. Conference, for me, standing here today is the culmination of about a 20-year journey. A journey that began on the streets of Hutton South Ward in Brentwood back in 1998. I was a volunteer then, delivering leaflets, going door to door, and eventually putting my name forward for a local council seat. Never for 1 minute did I believe or even think that I might end up here, standing before you today as your chairman of this great party, helping to deliver Brexit and backing our Prime Minister to get a great deal for the best for Britain as we leave the European Union. But that is the opportunity that this party has given to me. And providing opportunity has always been the driving purpose of my politics. And I think the driving purpose of our party. The belief, set out so powerfully by the Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street on her first day on the job, that how far you go in life should be determined not by the circumstances of your birth, but by the dreams you have and how hard you are prepared to work for them. That is the very essence. That is the very essence of what it means to be a Conservative. It is the belief that makes us all, every single one of us, part of the Conservative family. Now, Tom mentioned this. Like all families, we occasionally have our differences. We won't always agree, but the shared belief in delivering opportunity, a belief passed down from generation to generation, will always bring us together. It means that this party is bigger than any one issue because we are a family. Now, conference, we have the eyes of the country on us over the next few days. And we as a party have a very simple choice. We can talk only about the things that matter to us, or we can take the opportunity to show people right across the country that we are, as ever, at their service, that we understand their priorities and hear their concerns, and that we are alive with the ideas and the energy to make the most of the opportunities ahead as we leave the European Union and chart a new course for ourselves in the world. I believe that is what we must do. Because we saw in Liverpool just earlier in the week that the Labour Party wants to undo everything that we have done and achieved as a country and take us back to square one. In Birmingham this week, we're looking ahead, focusing on delivering a great Brexit deal, and on making the most of the opportunities of Brexit as well. Because conference, vital though delivering Brexit is, vital though it is that we get that great deal for Britain and regain control of our money, our laws and our borders, it is just where we start. We have so much more to do. A stronger, fairer country to build. A greater ambition to fulfill. We want to tackle the injustices that hold too many people back. Things like homelessness, discrimination, and the growing problem of mental health. We want to get on with delivering our long-term plan for our fantastic NHS, and to continue our mission to give the best education to every child, to deliver on our 25-year environment plan so that we leave our country in a better state for our children. And we want to celebrate and support the thousands of small businesses and entrepreneurs across the country who I meet week in and week out. Those are who take the risks, put in the work, employ the workers, pay the taxes, who invent and adapt and innovate every day to drive our country forward and keep our economy strong. And remember, they are also the people that we interact with in our own communities every single day. From the publican and the shopkeeper in our villages to the owners and the managers and the teams in the firms in our towns and our cities. They're people, like my parents, who saw an opportunity, took a risk and gave it a go. They grew their own business. These are the people who want to work hard and do the right thing, people who deserve our support. So these are the things we want to do. The things I came into politics to achieve, and I suspect many of you in this hall today came into politics to achieve too. They are the things that as a husband, as a father, as a member of Parliament, I believe politics should be about. The simple desires of people to do better tomorrow than we did today. But also, we have to be honest with ourselves. That many in our country today feel that we have lost sight of these things. On many of the issues that are of greatest concern to them, they're not hearing what we have to say. So this week is an opportunity to set our focus on the things that matter to the people we are here to serve. Because that is conservatism at its best. It's pragmatic. It's about getting things done. It's rooted in the everyday worries that people have and in the belief that it is our job to make their lives that bit easier, that bit better. That it is our responsibility to give them every opportunity to be who they want to be. So throughout this week, together, we will set out new policies to help us deliver on the essential Conservative promise of opportunity for all. But as that task begins at home, we have to look at our own house, in our party. Because we can't just talk about opportunity for all, we must act on it. It's the right thing to do, but it also matters because if we don't, we face an uncertain, and let's be frank, an uncomfortable future. Our country is changing. It's becoming more diverse. Young people are increasingly politically active, inspired by social media, the referendum and political campaigns. New movements are emerging, putting issues like gender equality, fair treatment and opportunity for all at the very top of the agenda. So how do we respond? Now we can be proud of our record. You all know the story. Which political party in Britain has elected not just one, but two female prime ministers? You're getting there before me. This one. Which party put the first female Muslim minister into government? This party. Which party appointed the first ever Lord Chancellor? Yes, this party, our party, the Conservative Party. And we have done so much more. We are the party that passed the Equal Marriage Act, recognising in that love is love no matter who you want to marry. We are also the party that took action by reforming Stop and Search so that young black men were no longer unjustly targeted and confidence in the system could be restored. We are the party that shone a light on the problem of discrimination with a pioneering audit of the way that public services are delivered and designed to overcome that discrimination for good. It's a proud record. But if we are honest, it hasn't done enough to change the perception that some people have of our party. So we must do far, far more to show that we understand and that we reflect modern Britain. That means building a party that really is fit for the future. We have made a start. I've set an ambition to ensure that 50% of the people on our candidates list are women, with a plan to make it happen. And within just 2 months of announcing that ambition, almost 100 more women have come forward and signed up to take those first steps on their journey to Parliament. And that is a great start. We're also focusing on attracting more young people to our party. And I'm pleased to say that we have a record number of young people at our conference this week. But our greatest challenge still lies ahead of us. And that is winning more support from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. Now, I don't underestimate the size of this task. Our vote among ethnic minority voters is stalling. Yet we can be to build Britain. 100 years ago, in the First World War, at least 1.3 million Indians volunteered to fight for the British Army. 70 years ago, many travelled from around the world to make their home in this country and help build our fantastic NHS. Today, Muslim communities in Britain give more to charity than any other group, donating around £100 million to charities every year. A stunning example to us all. And the values that these things speak to, country, aspiration, self-reliance, hard work, are our values too. They are conservative values. So I want us to become the natural home for ethnic minority communities within a generation. Now, since our last conference, we have appointed 2 vice chairmen responsible for reaching out to Britain's diverse communities. And we need to open up a real conversation with those communities where we are underrepresented, helping us to better understand where we're not doing enough and to know how we can turn it around. That is why we are expanding our outreach team. And we have set up a communities working group to ensure that every community is part of our policy-making process so that we better understand how every policy will impact on the lives of those who too rarely have a voice in British politics. And today, I can announce that we are establishing a dedicated mentoring fund to support those who are underrepresented in our party. A fund to provide guidance and training to help them pursue a life in public service, and to encourage more people from diverse backgrounds around our country to stand for Parliament, become MPs, and help us truly represent the face of modern Britain. For if we don't make these changes, this party, the oldest political party in the world, faces a challenging future. This is essential to our continued success as a party, to our ambition to remain the most successful electoral force anywhere in the world, and to our determination to represent and serve every community in our country, to live up to our name as the Conservative and Unionist Party. Our voice and our place at the heart of British politics has rarely been more important. Because as we saw just last week, the destructive and divisive spectre of socialism is back. The belief that the government knows how to run our lives better than we do has returned. The dangerous dogma that says there is no problem that can't be solved by throwing more and more of your money at it is alive once again. So we are engaged in a fight for the very future of our country. A fight with a Labour Party that wants to unravel the policies that have made our economy strong, to unwind the Brexit that people voted for and take us back to square one. That would be a disaster for Britain, because we know that even the best Labour governments end up leaving our country in the same state, out of money, out of ideas. And today's Labour Party does not represent the best of Labour. It's the worst. An unreconstructed party of the hard left, a reversion to the bleak days of the past, a time that we all thought was long gone, a time of militants, Marxists and misogynists, of nasty prejudices and nonsensical ideas. So we must engage in this battle, turn our fire on the enemy, Jeremy Corbyn and his dangerous hard left ideas. Because when we focus only on ourselves, we lose sight of the real threat closer to a government led by him. So let us come together and take the fight to Labour, because the choice in British politics has rarely been so important or so clear. It's between a Conservative party, the party of the union that wants to spread opportunity and bring people together, and Jeremy Corbyn, a man who sanctions and tolerates division and hate, turns a blind eye to anti-Semitism, embraces militants and extremists, and supports our enemies against our friends. A man who, through his actions and his words over many years, has shown himself to be unqualified, untrustworthy, unfit to govern this great country. So, conference, party, it is up to us to take the fight to Labour, to show people around the country what we stand for, and to show how we will shape that brighter future for us all. To fight and win the battle of ideas that rages in our politics today. To show how the essential conservative beliefs of freedom, fairness and opportunity can build the stronger Britain that we want and that we need. Let that be our focus as we join together this week, as we look beyond Brexit and to the future, as we show how we will make the most of those opportunities that lay ahead for us, as we work together as one Conservative family and take that fight to Labour, so that we can build a country and a party of opportunity for all. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lord Digby Jones of Birmingham.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, all of you, for coming to hold your conference in my home city. I was born in King's Heath, just over there, my mum in Small Heath, just over there, my dad in Saltley by the gasworks, just over there, and Pat, my wife, in Handsworth, back there. I am truly a Brummie, proud of it, and just so delighted and thrilled that you have come to honour us with your conference. I have never belonged to a political party in my life. I've the only minister that the country's ever had that didn't belong to the party or government. But what I am is I find my constituency in business, in the creation of wealth. There is nothing wrong, Mr. McDonnell, with making money. It is what you do with it and how you make it that matters, and I have believed all my life in socially inclusive wealth creation. And there was a guy 6 miles down the road out in Bourneville, came up from London over 100 years ago, George Cadbury, and he fused those two things in this city brilliantly, making money and at the same time taking the whole of society with you. You see, only business will create the profit from which you get the tax, from which you build a public sector. Think about it. When business makes money, it can only do one of three things with it. It can reward the shareholders who took the risk in the first place by way of dividend or capital gain on sale, and they'll pay tax on it. Or you can keep it in the business as retained profit, and you'll pay tax on it. Or you can pay your people overtime, commission, bonuses, salary, wages, and they'll pay tax on it. And that tax goes in part to pay for the good, decent, hard-working people we need in the public sector. The teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the policemen, the soldiers, the sailors, the airmen, and they'll pay tax on it. But if it wasn't for the wealth that business creates, there would not be 1 penny of taxation, and there would not be a job in the private or public sector at all. And those people who actually feel that for some reason that doesn't matter, they think it grows on trees. Well, I can tell you now, tell that to a hard-working businesswoman up in Newcastle-on-Tyne. She's got a house on the line to the bank. She's employing 10 people. She hasn't had a holiday for 3 years. She's paying her fair share. And she believes in freedom of choice and a market economy. And at the end of the day, that is what generates wealth for a nation. That's what makes this great nation so great. And so I'm here today, as well as welcoming you, I'm also here today to just put out two messages without party political tribalism. I don't belong to any of you, so it's not said that way. It is said because this country has to have your help to produce two things. First up, believe me, Brexit will happen. I voted for it. I'm proud I did. And if it happened again, I'd vote again. I'll say to all those people who want another referendum, I actually would agree to having another one if you can have the best of 7. What business needs is boring, predictable stability. And what it now needs is to get it sorted. And in case we think this is our problem, I'll tell you now there are 150,000 jobs in Germany alone that depend on a deal with this country. Cars made in Germany, we buy more of them than China and America buy together. We matter to Germany. And at the end of the day, why did I vote Brexit? Because I don't want to be run by another country. I want my elected government to run it. As an employer and as an investor, I want to pick immigrants, skilled people who want to come to this country and want to work hard, earn good money, and help pay some tax and build some schools and hospitals. And I don't give a damn about the colour of their skin. I couldn't care the God they worship. I don't care where they come from. I want to fish in a reservoir of the whole world, not just 27 countries. I want my judges to decide on issues, and I want my ministers that we elect of any party to get round the world and do the deals. I don't want to belong to a group of people who have delivered peace, well done, who've given a home to former Soviet countries, brilliant, who form a single market, but actually at the end of the day are marching valiantly towards 1970. I don't want it. This is Asia's century. This is Asia's time. We boss the 19th. America bossed the 20th. This is their time, and we've got to get out there and do the business. And so I want a single market for manufactured goods. It works brilliantly. And frankly, if I have a common rule book for there, I don't care, because what I want is the stability for that to work. We've never had a single market for services. Don't let anybody ever tell you that, and that is 80% of our economy. So to be freed out, and we can go anywhere and make services work for this country. Financial services are 8% of our GDP, but it's 12% of our tax take. That's genuine value added. Only 8% of what financial services does in this country is linked to the European Union. 92% is elsewhere, whatever the propaganda sheet for Brussels called the Financial Times might tell you. So I want this done, and I want to turn the initiative onto Europe. I thought they showed themselves what they really are, the bully boys, by their behaviour to our Prime Minister in Salzburg. I thought it was disgusting. And when I was working out this morning what I was going to say today, I was going to say the next bit anyway, and I didn't know, actually, Prime Minister, that you were in the room. So, trouble is, people are now going to say, I'm only saying this because you're here, but I genuinely didn't know until about 1.5 minutes ago out there. I have to say, your response next afternoon was brilliant, because what you said was, I have always treated you with respect. I expect you to treat, not me, but our country with the same respect. Spot on. So business is so important that when I heard a former Foreign Secretary say F business, it showed him up for the irrelevant and offensive person that he really is. And it take great exception to that. And so what you, all of you, need to do now, and all of the members and the MPs who aren't in this room, you need to come together. Leave your ideology at the door and understand what works. How are we going to get this to work? And Germany wants this to work. Mr. Macron is going to pay a very hard price for saying he wants to punish us in his own country, because the deal is the one that will work. And what we want is a practical solution. And I would suggest the one on the table. I know that lots of people don't like it, but actually at the end of the day, it works. And it will get us there and look after that ability to create wealth that business needs. But I want you also to stop this Brexit navel-gazing. I want you to stop dividing your party. You are the government of the country. You've got to unify and stop it, because you've got a far greater threat than Brexit coming down the pipe. And that is that Jeremy Corbyn is to wealth creation what Diane Abbott is to mathematics. And how on earth the duly elected leader of the biggest trade union in this country, Len McCluskey, can think that waving a Palestinian flag somehow helps a worker on the line at Jaguar Land Rover down at Castle Bromwich is beyond me. If you don't get your act together and unify so the business community can feel you're on their side, if you don't get your act together and unify so that everybody else out there can see that you actually are going to take the fight for democratic capitalism, you will surrender this enormous, fabulous, powerful country to a former Marxist, former Stalinist, former militant, hard-left government. And that would be a disgrace. What you have got to do for Britain, we cannot allow that to happen. We do not want a government that takes 10% of the equity of every single business that employs over 250 people and effectively nationalises it. Gives each of the workers 500 quid and keeps the rest for the government. That's nationalisation. You want to put, and in that statement he said they'd have to be members of unions, you want to put 3 members into every boardroom. And at the same time, you're actually going to tax the wealth on which tax has already been paid. So you'll see a flight of capital and talent that will go out of this country like you've never seen before, and what you'll never know is the people who won't come in here. Because believe me, wealth creators don't like business haters. And what we... And all over Britain, people are faced by a prospective government and official opposition who want power, who are defined by hate, defined by intolerance, and defined by dislike, racially, other countries, and business. This isn't my country if that lot get into power. Just believe it. And the only people who can stop this are you. And you have to come together, and you have to fight this. Because at the end of the day, once we are out and onto the ocean, with Europe as one of our best friends and a fabulous trading partner, with a deal that works, because you'll have a single market for manufactured goods and not any form of feta for 80% of our economy with service goods. Once we are out there and we can take the pearl out of the oyster that is global trade in Asia's century, there is not a thing this country cannot do. There is not a thing that our young cannot achieve. And I was in this city when we couldn't bury the dead under the last socialist government. I was in this city when they made a closed shop down at Longbridge, and they actually got hold of people who wanted the choice to cross the picket line and beat them up. And I was in this city when I saw us become a laughing stock because the IMF had to come in and tell Britain how to run their economy. All I can tell you is I thank you hugely for coming here, and I thank you for giving me the chance to have a few minutes. All I can tell you is the whole nation, the business community, every nurse, every policeman, every prison officer, every single one of us deserve better than that. Thank you very much. couple of years ago in May, this region elected their first ever elected mayor. He came from business. He had never belonged to a party before. He joined the Conservative Party, stood for election, and won. And the West Midlands, 5.3 million people, a bigger population than Scotland, has Andy Street as its mayor. And it gives me enormous privilege because he has been my friend for years. And he ran a fabulous business, doing business how I do business at John Lewis. And at the end of the day, he now is in charge of 5.3 million people, and bless him. He's going to come and talk to you. We all will welcome him. But before that, just have a look at this.
Hi Conference, I'm Jake Cooper, and just this May I was elected as a councillor in Dudley. At 18 years old, there's one for the Tory record books. It's a busy job, but I'm getting to work with Mayor Andy Street to lay the foundations for our region's future success. And we're finally starting to get the investment we need, like the £350 million housing deal with government. This deal lets us clean up sites that have been derelict for years, so we can build new homes while protecting our green spaces across the West Midlands. Or the £250 million investment for the expansion of the metro through Samwell and into Dudley, so our public transport works better for us all. Or the National Battery Industrialisation Centre for Coventry, which is already providing a magnet for cutting-edge businesses to invest in the West Midlands. But it's not just investment. We're teaming up with local businesses and residents, making a difference to issues people care about, like reducing bus fares for apprentices and trainees, setting up projects like Housing First through the Homelessness Task Force, so we can help to reduce rough sleeping, getting City of Culture for Coventry, and the Commonwealth Games for Birmingham. We've achieved all this together, working with residents, businesses, councillors and government, and of course with the Mayor of the West Midlands. Conference, I give you the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street.
Thanks very much, Jake, and what a brilliant advocate you are for our party. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a very big week ahead of us. We face historic challenges, and our country is looking to us for leadership. On some questions, we need to hold our nerve. On others, we need bold new ideas. And simply, there's nowhere better than the West Midlands to find the answers. We've led the world before. The Industrial Revolution was born here, and during the Napoleonic Wars, Birmingham manufactured nearly 2 million guns for the Duke of Wellington. The Spitfires, which won the Battle of Britain, were built at Castle Bromwich. And today, in Wolverhampton, the weapons systems for the F-35 fighter are coming off the production line. So perhaps Donald Tusk and Emmanuel Macron should remember that when it's the next time they pick a fight with our Prime Minister. So in the spirit of the great Brummies of the past, let's make this week a week of great exchange of ideas, inspiration and energy. And I'm delighted to welcome you back to Birmingham, my home. We'll show you what Conservatives can do when we win in urban Britain. And we've even stocked the pubs and bars ready for you. Now, I was brought up here. As a kid, I was often around this part of town. Back then, there was no symphony hall. Instead, you'd see trolleys dumped in the canals, derelict buildings, and closed factories. There was a decay that looked like it couldn't be reversed. And most of all, the pride of this great place had been dented. And seeing this happen to my home led to two decisions which have really shaped me. First, I could see what happens when people couldn't find meaningful work, and I could see the importance of thriving businesses to a place like this. And that's what made me a Conservative. And second, I saw the tough times that people were going through. My first reaction was that I wanted to be a social worker for Birmingham City Council, but I didn't get the job. So I started a career with a special company, John Lewis. It was a great career that I loved until this dream job came up. And now we've started to turn things around here. In the last year, the West Midlands had the best increase in jobs anywhere outside London and more startups than anywhere outside London. We're the only region of the country to enjoy a trade surplus with China, and we won the City of Culture for Coventry and the Commonwealth Games for Birmingham. Together, we are beginning to restore pride in our region. So how are we doing it? Well, firstly, we focused on our real strengths, on those industries where we really are the best in the world. Autonomous vehicles being tested on the streets of Birmingham, electric taxis being manufactured in Coventry, and Solihull Land Rovers being sold around the globe. And engineers, they're the heroes here in the West Midlands, but not just with cars. In Aston, Frappuccino makes high-tech coffee machines which are exported around the globe, including to Italy. And I'm told there's even one in Downing Street. A perfect solution after a long Brexit cabinet meeting. But beyond engineering, our doctors and scientists are focused on the race against diseases such as cancer and Alzheimer's. We have a thriving creative and media scene, led by the youngest and most diverse population in Europe. Indeed, we're hoping that Channel 4 come to join us in Birmingham to shape the future of broadcasting. And in all these sectors, digital is the golden thread, disrupting every single business. So we must stay ahead. And that's why it's great news that we will be the first region in the UK to build out 5G technology. And that makes our autonomous vehicles safer. It connects our ambulances to hospitals in real time. And it even allows Jeremy Corbyn to watch Press TV when he's on his allotment. Now, I've been Mayor of the West Midlands for about 18 months now. And every day, what I see inspires me. Their own business since I last stood on this stage. To the young apprentice at Cadbury's who started just 3 years ago, and now he told me he's a new manager and he's just picked up the keys to his first home. To the jewellery quarter cafe owner who proudly said that she'd taken my advice and taken on a rough sleeper to give them a chance in life. That is what's going on here. It's all about a positive vision for the future and acting upon it. And our Conservative team, we wouldn't have achieved any of that without our Conservative team. It starts, of course, with the government investing in the people of the West Midlands. Sajid Javid and James Brokenshire providing the funds to clean up derelict sites that have lain derelict for decades. Greg Clark supporting our industrial future with that battery centre in Coventry. And Chris Grayling working with us to reverse the Beeching railway cuts. And just today, I'm pleased to announce with Chris that the West Midlands will be the first future mobility area in the UK. The government's investing £20 million in new mobility services, working with companies on research and design, on new modes of transport, and to use data to bust congestion on our roads. And I've been proud to work with our Conservative mayors around the country, with Tim, with Ben, and with James. And of course, I look forward to welcoming Sean Bailey to the Mayor's Club in 2020. And thank you to our brilliant volunteers, our excellent councillors, our hard-working local MPs. Without this team, none of what we see around the West Midlands would be happening. But I do want to thank two people in particular. First of all, to Philip Hammond, who's had the confidence to consistently invest in the West Midlands. And I thought after my years in the boardroom, I knew my way around a spreadsheet. But nothing could be quite like being grilled by the Chancellor. And of course, to thank someone I refer to as an honorary West Midlander. She even has her own seat in the Sedgley Conservative Club, so often has she visited. Someone who embodies the spirit of hard work, getting on with the job and delivering. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, our Prime Minister, Theresa May. Thank you. But I cannot stand here and say that these successes are felt everywhere. There are still too many communities that are not sharing in our progress, and that's not good enough. Our growth must be inclusive, providing opportunity for everyone, no matter what their background. And tackling the big issues, youth unemployment, rough sleeping, and mental health, these are the challenges that we must deal with to truly be a party for everybody. And I said I'd be a mayor for all communities, because for years, some communities across the West Midlands were left behind, if not simply forgotten. And under my watch, I will never allow that to happen again. Because the lesson of history is very, very clear. That when we succeed here in the heart of the country, the UK as a whole succeeds. And that's why I'm pleased it's this government that gets it. We were the ones to devolve power to the cities. And this government's continued support for HS2 shows our commitment to the whole nation is genuine. And this morning, Chris Grayling and I kicked off the construction of HS2, which is already having a real impact, creating new jobs, building new homes, and improving local transport. And on that, we need to stand strong for what is in the national interest. And as we look to rebalancing our relationship with Europe, in the export capital of the UK, we must stand squarely behind the businesses that have led our success. But also, we will seize the new opportunities that Brexit gives us, selling our products around the world. And that's why this Wednesday, James Brokenshire, as the Midlands Engine Minister, and I will be travelling to India to deepen those commercial relationships. And the next opportunity is to bring power over European regional spending back not just to Whitehall, but to Wolverhampton and to Warsaw, so that local people can decide how that money is spent. So when I stood for mayor, I was often called the man with a plan. The man with a plan. And we were given a chance against all the odds to show what Conservative leadership in urban Britain could do. And now we're getting on with the job. And that's exactly what people want and expect us to do here and everywhere else, to get on with the job. And let's be clear, it is a job rather like being a CEO, being accountable, but this time one's accountable to 2 million voters. And success demands teamwork across politics, business, academia, and communities. So it's a new type of job. Conference. The West Midlands is on the cusp of great things. As you walk out of this conference centre, you'll see that the foundations are literally being laid before you. HSBC's new headquarters and a new square, which even Joe Chamberlain would have been proud of. Urban conservatism is delivering economic success, and it's driven by the diversity which will define modern Britain. So, conference, thank you. The stakes are very high here. Labour want my scalp. They do. But you have brought us a very long way, and I'm very grateful for that. But we have so much further to go if we're genuinely to build opportunity for everyone. And that matters more here than anywhere else in a region where, quite simply, you can see the world from our 7 boroughs. Thank you for your support.
Bringing bags for the hustlers, gangsters, bad bitches, and your ugly ass friends. I cannot preach, I cannot preach. I gotta show them how a pimp get it in. First, take your sip, do your dip, spend your money like money ain't shit. Ooh, ooh, we too fresh. Got to blame it on Jesus. Hashtag blessed. They ain't ready for me. I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up. So many pretty girls around me and they're waking up the rocket. Keep up. Why you mad? Fix your face. Ain't my fault they all be jocking. Keep up. Players only. Come on, put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do? What you trying to do? 24 karat magic in the air. Head to toe so clear. Look out. Everywhere I go, they be like, ooh, so bad. Everywhere I go, they be like, ooh, so bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President Hall.
Good afternoon, Conference. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this section titled Global Britain. As Conservatives, we want a United Kingdom that stands tall in the world, a confident and outward-looking country building and growing ties around the globe with old partners and new friends alike, a country that can trade its way to prosperity and where everyone has the opportunity to benefit from a strong and resilient economy. Economic prosperity, social stability, and our collective security are all part of a continuum. You cannot disrupt one without disrupting them all. I'm proud that the UK has a world-class military, an aid programme that represents the best of British values, and a diplomatic network with influence right across the globe. We are truly Great Britain. In this session, we will hear from some of the ministers who are making Global Britain a reality. Liam Fox, the Secretary of State for International Trade, the Secretary of State for International Development, Penny Mordaunt, the Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, and the Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary, Jeremy Hunt. But firstly, we will hear from Syed Kamal, co-chairman of the European Conservatives and Reformists Group. Syed has served our party with great distinction and stood up for British interests in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Syed Kamal, MEP. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a huge honour to be here once again at this, our last party conference before we leave the European Union. And my last conference as leader of the European Conservatives and Reformists in the European Parliament. But unlike the band Status Quo, who announced their farewell tour in 1984, but is still rocking all over the world, I promise you that my farewell will be much shorter. But as a famous Austrian-American said, I'll be back. These are challenging but opportune times for us all, not just in the UK, but also across many European capitals. And the conversations that we are having here in Britain are in some ways no different to the conversations taking place across Europe. And when I'm consulted by both British and EU negotiators, it is clear that both sides want a deal. Both sides are also asking similar questions. What are our red lines? Where can we compromise? What will this mean for our companies and our workers? Brexit is a defining moment for us all, not just for the Conservative Party, not just for our nation, but for the European Union too. Because while the EU continues to grapple with the migration and refugee crisis, with the problems of the Eurozone, and with continued high levels of unemployment, it is no wonder that in many EU countries, people are saying, enough is enough. And we see voters turning to non-mainstream parties, creating shockwaves right across Europe. And our group in the European Parliament, the European Conservatives and Reformists, are constantly warning EU leaders that the best way to regain the confidence of the people is to listen to voters' anxieties, to have honest conversations, and then to address their concerns. And that is why the difficult discussions that we are currently having, both as a party and as a country, are essential if we want to get the right deal for the future of our country, for the future of our economy, and our future place in the world. And you compare that to the confusion that defines Labour's approach. Labour attempts a form of words that pretends to appeal to everyone, but is clear to no one. And Conservatives continue to deliver on the referendum result. The Prime Minister has been very clear that anything which fails to respect the referendum result, or which effectively divides our country in two, would be a bad deal. And that no deal is better than a bad deal. But she's also been clear that the best outcome is for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union with a deal. So whatever the outcome of the negotiations, we must seize the opportunity to forge a better future, to define what we are for, not focus on what we are against. We are for free trade, we are for liberalising markets, and we are for individual freedom. We are for a relationship with the European Union defined no longer by simply transposing EU rules, but instead working together where it is in our mutual interest. We are all here as Conservatives, committed to getting the best deal, to make the lives of everyone living in Britain better. We are proud Conservatives, we are proud Britons, and we will still be proud globalists. I'm incredibly excited for what the future holds. A Britain where hard work and ambition are rewarded, where you can succeed no matter your background, built on our history as a nation that has set sail, that discovers and that explores. And all the things that define us were never dependent on our membership of the EU. Napoleon called us a nation of shopkeepers, but we are also a nation of inventors, of entrepreneurs, and of pragmatists. And I believe that this spirit of free enterprise, of innovation, and of pragmatism will ensure our success for years to come. You know, this is an exciting moment in our nation's history, a history that tells us that challenging times never defeat us. They make us stronger. A history that shows us that during periods of change, we emerge determined and united. In the 1970s, we joined a European economic community sold by the political classes and some in the media as mostly a trading relationship. But 40 years later, we leave a European project committed to political union. So, I believe we will be better off as good neighbours rather than uncommitted tenants. I believe that we have always seen a world beyond just Europe. And I believe that we will emerge from Brexit with a determination to build a truly global Britain. Thank you.
Conference, I would like to call to the stage an engineer, a disruptor, an athlete, the award-winning founder and CEO of PayGen, Lawrence Kemble-Cook.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Cheers. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Lawrence. I'm an entrepreneur and CEO of PaveGen. I had an idea to generate energy from people's footsteps. I had the idea that we could generate renewable power from every step people take. You could generate energy, store it in batteries, and use it to help power cities of the future. So I graduated Loughborough University in 2009 with a big idea. It was a really tough time. The university didn't want to help me. The venture capital community didn't want to help. They didn't believe it would work. And even the regional development agencies said it would never work either. So we had a really tough time. I spent many years thinking about this idea, and eventually I raised investment from 2,000 investors internationally and based in the UK. And we've had some incredible success internationally since. We recently took it, for one of our first projects, to a favela in Brazil. We used the energy of people playing sports, playing football on a pitch. We used that energy to power the lights in a favela community. So the power of sport turned the lights on and kept them on. And also in the United States. Now, the Trump administration may not be well known for their views on renewable energy, but on the day of Trump's inauguration, we installed a contract in the heart of Washington, D.C., not far from the White House, where we used the energy of people walking, 10,000 people a day, to power all the lights in the central area. We've taken this technology, it's gone to Korea, Hong Kong. We've even just delivered one of our first major contracts in California with one of the largest banks in the area. So it's incredibly exciting times. Our first project in the Middle East has just happened. It's now at Abu Dhabi Airport, where the thousands of visitors a day are helping to power the airport, and it gives data and insights into how people are moving in the airport environment. So we're really excited about the future. From the United States to Asia and so forth. There's so much potential for a core technology like PaveGen, manufactured in the UK with a team based in London of engineers, designers, and developers making this happen. So entrepreneurs like me are used to navigating obstacles to build a business. For me, Brexit challenges are no different. So I want to focus on the future. We want to look at positivity and supporting international growth. And we've done all this with things like the support of the Department for International Trade that actually helped put our company on a map internationally, from going to China with David Cameron in 2013 and other international trips that really helped to shape us. Now, in just a moment, I will be introducing His Right Honourable Liam Fox MP. But before that, now, Liam and I may not agree on everything. Some of the tech sector and myself voted Remain. But what we do agree on for the future is this. SMEs are the lifeblood of the UK economy. In today's fast-moving world, so SMEs are the lifeblood of the UK economy. In today's fast-moving world, with digital disruption on the horizon, we need to support new ideas, new technologies that can really make Britain great. Ideas, design, manufacturing, technology are all things that I believe puts the UK in a great position for the future. We really need to nurture these ideas to actually make sure that in 2-3 years' time, we're one of the strongest forces in the world. So I'd like to introduce to the stage the man behind it who's really pushing international trade, His Right Honourable Liam Fox, MP. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Great.
Well, thank you, Lawrence. Sometimes in political life, the decisions that we take and the implications that they have for our country's future can only be seen sometime later, often well after the event. This is not one of those times. The decisions that we take in the coming days and months will profoundly shape our relationship with the European Union and the world beyond as we develop a vision of a truly global Britain. And as we do so, I want you to keep a number of things in mind. First, we are not passengers in our own destiny,
but can shape it in line with our own beliefs and values, we simply need to have the courage to do so. Second, we must stop refighting the referendum and come together to honour the democratic will of the British people, or we will risk undermining faith in that democratic system itself. And third, we need to show confidence and optimism in the future if we're to give the British people the leadership they require. And there is so much for us to be optimistic about. Remember those predictions of the economic shock that we would get if we voted to leave the European Union? Let's look at how they turned out. Did we see a rise in unemployment of 500,000? No, we added 600,000 jobs to the economy. Did we see investors leaving the UK in droves? No. Last year, we had the third largest number of inward investment projects in Britain's history. Did people abroad stop buying British? No, in the last year, we saw UK exports of goods and services rise to a record £621 billion. That's up over 60 billion on the year before. And what did we sell? Bit harder for you, that one. We sold almost £50 billion worth of mechanical machinery, £33 billion worth of cars, £28 billion worth of electrical machinery, and £26 billion worth of pharmaceutical products. So much for the critics, and Britain not making anything anymore. And that's before we even consider the services that I will come to later. It doesn't take an economic expert to understand that improved exports lead to greater profits and generate tax revenues to support the public services on which we depend, from health to defence. Now, it's just over 2 years since the Prime Minister asked me to set up the Department for International Trade to prepare Britain for an independent trade policy as we left the European Union. At the time, I was told by some that it wasn't a real department, that there was nothing for it to do, that I didn't have a real job. In fact, Nick Clegg said in 2016 that within 18 months my department would have nothing to do because the UK would be staying within the customs union. You might remember him when the Lib Dems had a leader. Well, we are leaving the customs union and the single market, despite the best efforts of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party to thwart it. And that means that over the summer, we were able to start our public consultations on future new free trade agreements with the United States, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as potential membership of CPTPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership that includes Japan, Canada, and Mexico, some of our most important trading partners, and a sign that we are committed to a truly global Britain in the future. As a department, we now have an organisation of some 3,800 staff based in 108 countries around the world. We recruited one of the best trade negotiators in the world to lead over 500 trade specialists and created a new trade profession across Whitehall. We have started the new National Trade Academy programme to skill up our businesses on trade issues and launched our summer trade school to give youngsters a head start on a trade career. We fulfilled our manifesto commitments to reinstate the Board of Trade and to create a global network of Her Majesty's Trade Commissioners, each of whom has responsibility for one of the 9 global trade regions. We've set up 14 trade working groups with 21 countries, including Canada, Mexico, and South Korea, which I will visit this week. And ministers have now made 208 visits overseas in support of exports and investment, and we're working on trade reviews with India and Brazil. So, Nick, so much for nothing to do. And so much of the credit goes to our departmental whips, Joe Churchill and Baroness Mansour, my outstanding PPS, Mike Wood, and the PPS to our Minister, Dr. Caroline Johnson. And in my terrific ministerial team, I would like to thank my deputy, George Hollingbury, for hitting the ground running in his new post, Baroness Fairhead for leading on the government's new export strategy, and Graham Stewart for outstanding work in bringing investment into the country. But we have to be honest with ourselves about our country's trading performance. Whether or not we had decided to leave the EU, the UK would still have needed to up our game on exports. In 2016, the UK was exporting only 28.3% of GDP, a figure that has now risen, incidentally, to 30.4%, broadly similar to France, Italy, and Canada, but a long way behind Germany. That's why we announced in our new export strategy the ambition for Britain to export 35% of our GDP. This government, under this Prime Minister, will leave no stone unturned to ensure that Britain claims its due share of global prosperity. And last year, global exports were worth more than double what they were in 1997, and that's despite the global financial crisis. And the global economy is changing at a staggering pace, with new giants emerging to alter the landscape to which we've grown accustomed. It will amaze you to know that China is expected to have 220 cities with a population of more than 1 million by 2030. The whole of Europe will have just 35. We cannot wish away these inevitable changes, and nor should we. Economies in South Asia, East Asia, and Africa are becoming more and more prosperous, driving demand in precisely those sectors in which the UK excels. And UK products enjoy an unparalleled global reputation for quality, and the continued international demand for anything made in Britain, from luxury cars to business services, is growing. Take China, which I have already visited 4 times this year. According to research by Barclays, 57% of people in China would actually pay more for a product just because they knew it was made in Britain. What a reputation to have. What a head start on our competitors. What an opportunity. And despite us being unable to negotiate new trade agreements while we're members of the European Union, we have been able to agree new deals to open up markets to British products, such as the market for dairy products in China, worth almost £250 million over the next 4 years to the Northern Ireland economy. And across the world, the public and private sectors alike are seeking UK service exports in legal services, accountancy, design, project management, insurance, and everything in between, from improving education to delivering international sporting events. In the world of the knowledge economy, Britain's shelves are stacked with what the world wants. We, the United Kingdom, have the potential to be nothing less than a 21st century exporting superpower. And what of investment into Britain? What do the holders of global capital think about our country and its opportunities? Well, let me tell you, not only have we had the 3rd highest number of inward investment projects ever in this country, but more venture capital has come to London on tech in the past year than the whole of France, the whole of Spain, the whole of Ireland, and the whole of Germany combined. Not only is London the world's #1 metropolitan area for inward investment, but the Manchester, Liverpool conurbation and Birmingham have now joined London in the global top 20. Goldman Sachs now has a £1 billion under construction London headquarters, and Deutsche Bank is investing in a new upgraded London HQ in the Square Mile. Why? Because they believe Brexit's going to be a failure? I don't think so. Because investors recognize the strong fundamentals of the UK economy. Our legal system, our skilled workforce, our tax and regulatory environments, our world-leading universities, our access to tech, and our gold standard IP protection. Print that in the FT. But let me tell you what global investors really fear. They fear a Corbyn Labour government that would steal their investments and call it nationalisation. They fear the dark forces bubbling under the surface of the hard left, anti-wealth, anti-trade, and anti-Semitic. A Labour Party a Labour Party leader who actually admires Venezuela. Where a hungry population racked with hyperinflation increasingly seeks mass immigration as a solution. A party which is not the future of the young, but the betrayers of the young, whose reckless spending plans would leave an economic wasteland and a generation or more of debt to be repaid. To be frank, we failed to spell that out at the last election. We must now call out Corbyn's hard left Labour Party for what they actually are, a colossal threat to the next generation and to the security and well-being of our country itself. Now, for our part, we must focus on the national interest and tackling the big issues of the day, including our future relationship with Europe. As we leave the European Union, we will seek to maximize our trading relationship with our EU partners, who still make up over 43% of the value of our exports. But we will do so in a way that maximizes our opportunities to exploit those growing markets in the rest of the world. And remember, the EU itself accepts that 90% of global growth in the next 10 to 15 years will occur outside continental Europe. We have a right to expect our EU partners to engage seriously and with respect on our shared future relationship. It is simply not acceptable to dismiss the UK proposals without putting any other alternatives in place. We have made our position clear to the European Union. We will leave the customs union and the single market. We cannot accept the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. We will leave the common fisheries policy and the common agricultural policy. We will end free movement. We will have our own independent trade policy, and we will not accept any solution that divides the United Kingdom by treating Northern Ireland differently to any other part of our country. And if they don't like our proposals, let them set out their own. I'm sure I wasn't the only one, after Salzburg, to feel that the taunting of Theresa May, one of the most unfailingly polite people I have ever met, was absolutely beyond the pale. And we also have to understand, but with respect to Brexit, what the British people want is just for us to get on with it. Now, I make no apology for the fact that I believe that Brexit brings great opportunities to our country, or that embracing a more global view is in line with Britain's long and proud history. In fact, I'm proud to believe it. And as we take up our independent seat at the World Trade Organization next March, we will do so as champions of free trade. Free trade that has taken millions of our fellow human beings out of abject poverty, and that is the cornerstone of social cohesion, political stability, and our collective security. We must not allow the forces of protectionism to undermine all that we have built. For us, Brexit is not the occasion to pull up the drawbridge and to retreat into a more isolationist Britain. Quite the opposite. It is a chance to embrace the opportunities that the changing pattern of global trade presents. We stand at a historic crossroads, and the choices we make will require confidence, optimism, and courage. If we are to take advantage of the opportunities that are within our grasp, we must raise our ambitions, widen our horizons, and expand our timescales. Europe is and will continue to be an important market for our goods and services. But let's be clear to the people of our country. There is a world beyond Europe, and there will be a time beyond Brexit. And as we pursue our first independent trade policy in over 4 decades, we must deliver benefits for businesses, for workers and consumers alike. We must make Britain a world capital for investment and strike these new trade agreements that are a signal of our own self-confidence and a commitment to a free trading world. We should revel in the opportunity to seize these golden chances and to deliver confidence for our future, ambition for our country, and leadership for the world beyond. Thank you.
A win for Britain and a win for the developing world. That is the mission that the Secretary of State for International Development has placed at the heart of her department. I know how important this is. I've spent our international aid money overseas. As an officer in the Army Reserves, I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 as part of a military stabilization support team. We are helping to make our country safer, as well as helping some of the poorest people in the world. Over the past 10 months, Penny has ensured her department is at the forefront of that work. The UK has led many international responses to crisis, including support to the Rohingyas, fleeing ethnic cleansing in Burma, the ongoing humanitarian needs in Syria, Yemen, Somalia, South Sudan, and northeast Nigeria, and following the hurricanes in the Caribbean. She has reset UK aid, uniting the nation behind a national mission in the national interest. Global Britain delivering global goals. Over the next half an hour, you will hear from people working at home and abroad to ensure we are meeting those missions. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the Secretary of State for International Development, but first we will see a video showing UK aid in action.
When we watch the news or scroll through our social media, the world looks like it's falling apart. I'm here today to talk about those things and those people that pull the world together. Whether at home or abroad, when you volunteer to help, you put someone else's needs before your own. Doing that, stepping up, well, that's the parent of heroism. It often takes great sacrifice and courage, and it is the finest instinct of humanity. Now, by any measure, rather than falling apart, the world is actually getting a better place, thanks to people stepping up. Billions lifted out of poverty, health improving, twice as many kids in school than there were a decade ago. And that progress has been made because of the things that we stand for. the liberalisation of trade, scientific and medical discovery, the rule of law and property rights, education, and our unshakable belief in the power of human potential, democracy, and freedom. What our party stands for, what you stand for, is heroic. And those who defend those values and belief are heroes. Putting others first, standing up for what you know to be right, especially when you do so in the face of intimidation or violence. That takes courage, and it takes heart. Heroism can take many forms. Creating jobs is heroic. Scientific endeavour is heroic. Medical breakthroughs, protecting people, campaigning or raising funds, all being one of my ministers. I'm very fortunate to work with some amazing people. At DFID, Ministers Alistair Burt, Harriet Baldwin and Lord Bates, and our PPSs Michael Tomlinson and David Warburton. And at the Equalities Office, Ministers Vicky Atkins and Baroness Williams, and our PPS Rachel McLean. And I'm privileged, thank you. And I'm privileged to work with so many talented and brave and dedicated individuals who put others first. Some are scientists, some are farmers, others healthcare professionals or emergency responders, teachers, investors, entrepreneurs, humanitarians, and of course, our armed forces. What our nation is contributing and has contributed to the advancement of humanity is breathtaking. And this afternoon, I could tell you all about that. I could. But I'd rather show you. So I'm now going to clear off this stage. And I'm going to turn it over to some people who really deserve the spotlight this afternoon. Heroic Britons who are changing the world for the better, dedicating their lives, sometimes risking their lives to save others. Why do they do it? Why do we do it? Because that is what great nations do. Conference, prepare for your hearts to swell with pride and welcome to the stage Theo, James, Dom, and Eve. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, conference. I'm Theo Clark, the Chief Executive of the Coalition for Global Prosperity, and I'm honoured to be sharing the stage today with some truly remarkable individuals who are leading the way in making the world a safer, healthier, and more prosperous place for all of us. Britain is a force for good in the world, and the Coalition for Global Prosperity believes that Britain is at its very best when it acts as a global leader in development as well as in defence and diplomacy. We believe that with a smart and effective aid budget, leveraging British expertise, we can and do transform lives around the world. This has been proven time and time again. In the last 3 years, UK aid has ensured that 11.4 million children have gained a decent education. UK aid has supported the immunisation of approximately 37.4 million children and has provided 40.3 million people with access to clean water and better sanitation. These are staggering achievements, and they're achievements of the British public and should make all of us extremely proud. So why do we do this? Why does Britain care? We do this because it's the right thing to do, and the British public gets that. We care. That's why 30 million of us volunteer every single month. That's why in emergencies and conflict, we find people like Becky Platt, a paediatric nurse from Watford and part of the UK medical team saving lives. And we do this because we know that Britain is great when we boldly champion our values at home and abroad. I don't think it's a lack of caring that creates scepticism about aid. It's a lack of trust in what the government is doing with our money. And I get that. And that's why UK aid must absolutely address this head on to ensure that our development offer is something of which we can all be proud. And the public is right to want to have a greater focus on the outcomes. And that's exactly what this Conservative government is doing. That's why Penny Mordaunt has undertaken the biggest reset in her department's history. Our aid must reflect the people's priorities of global Britain, and it should put unashamedly first British values at its heart. As Penny Mordaunt has said, aid must not just be spent well, but it should not be spent more than better, and I couldn't agree more. And that said, investing in development is not merely a gesture of altruism, but it is truly in Britain's interest. It keeps us safe through investing in new drugs and treatments and responding to epidemics. And I've seen for myself the life-saving work carried out in Sierra Leone, preventing Ebola from reaching our shores. It also keeps us secure through partnering with our friends at the Ministry of Defence. UK aid is tackling organised crime, extremism and modern-day slavery. In Tanzania, this means impeding criminals smuggling heroin destined for the UK. Or in Nigeria, countering the violent extremist ideology of Boko Haram to reduce terrorist threats in the UK. It also helps our country prosperous. Through investing in jobs and people in emerging economies, we are creating our future trading partners of tomorrow. And finally, the government are tackling the issues that we truly care about. They are confronting the challenges of climate change and plastic waste. They are protecting endangered species, such as the Sumatran tiger, while creating sustainable jobs at the same time. And they are ensuring that Commonwealth veterans and their families, who bravely served our nation during World War II, are not living in poverty, but instead are supported so they can live in dignity. This is UK aid in action. And I want to end by talking about the generosity of the British public. Each year, billions of pounds are donated to charity. In the last year, over 1 million, mostly Rohingya women and children, fled violence in Myanmar, arriving in Bangladesh, exhausted, traumatized, and in urgent need of shelter, medical care, food, and water. And the reaction from the British public was incredible, raising over £30 million. So thank you. And I'll now hand over to a short video from a special someone who also wants to thank the British public, Richard Curtis.
As the founder of Comic Relief, I'm still amazed at the public's reaction to Red Nose Day and how willing they are to give such enormous amounts of money to people with very hard lives at home and abroad. And I know that out of sight is out of mind, but when we actually show people on the TV how hard other people's lives can be, they do react with enormous passion and give millions and millions of pounds of their own money. And I think that UK aid represents exactly that same passion, and it does just what people would want it to do. It reacts to emergency, it saves lives, especially the lives of children. But also, of course, it looks for long-term solutions to try and really solve the problems, you know, with education and focusing on health and focusing on jobs. And I would say that I think that UK aid and everything that it stands for is, and particularly for the younger generation, one of the things which actually defines what it means to be a British person in the 21st century. And I think we should all be very proud of what it does, work to make it more useful, more effective, more targeted, but never forget the authority that it gives us and also the correctness of what it does.
The UK has a proud tradition of supporting nations in need, and no individuals encompass these values better than our brave British medical heroes who put themselves in harm's way to respond rapidly and save lives in the midst of conflict and emergencies. We now have a short video from one such hero, Becky Platt, a paediatric nurse from Watford.
Hello, my name's Becky Platt. I'm a children's nurse and I'm proud to say that I've been working in the NHS for the last 22 years. I'm also a member of UK Med and I deployed as part of the UK emergency medical team to the diphtheria outbreak in Bangladesh at the end of last year. I've been able to see firsthand the benefits that UK aid can bring to populations across the world, and I know that responding to humanitarian crises and providing care to other human beings who really need our help is absolutely the right thing to do. In addition to providing care to those people who really need it, we are preventing diseases crossing borders and preventing problems coming to Britain as well. So it's a win-win. We're providing care to those who need it and we're keeping our population safe. I know that it's the right thing to do.
And now it's my great pleasure to welcome to the stage one of Britain's great entrepreneurs, Dominic Mcveigh.
Thank you very much. My name is Dominic Mcveigh, and I'm going to start just by telling you a little bit about me and my background, where I'm from, and the work that I'm doing today with the support of UK aid and the British government. I'm originally from East London. My parents were born at the end of the Second World War. My father was a musician, and my mother spent most of my childhood, sadly, in and out of hospital through cancer treatment. Thankfully, she is still with us here today. The reason I make this point is because I'm not from a family of business or entrepreneurs, but I have been a serial entrepreneur with some success, I'd like to think, and also failures among the years. At the age of around 12, I was heavily involved in developing the micro-scooters and razor scooters you might be familiar with, your children, yourselves, your grandchildren might have. By the time I was 15, I was responsible for selling around 11 million of these micro-scooters globally. I left school shortly after that. Quite honestly, whilst I was selling scooters, I didn't think I'd be here given the opportunity to talk today about where I've come from since then. So I left school around the age of 15 and 16 and have invested heavily in businesses throughout my, what I'd like to think of long career, but some say short. I'm now 33 and I employ 20,000 people globally. I lead a business which generates over $200 million in revenue, mainly focusing on garment manufacturing in developing countries. I work with some of the poorest and most needy people in the world. I have a facility in Ethiopia where we employ 1,500 people. I set that facility up less than 18 months ago, and we are exporting over 1 million pieces a month from Ethiopia. I go to the slums, I go to some of the poorest parts of the communities to find the girls, to find those that have been issues within communities. I take the girls, I give them training, paid training from day one. We get them into work, sexual education, diseases, precancerous cells, things that people aren't even conscious of in their communities to make sure that they have the best hope at life. I focus on breaking the cycle of poverty in the poorest parts of the world. And it honestly would not be permanent. The ports would not work. The factory that I am in the work that has been doing by the government. In Kenya, I shipped $50 million of goods in my first year. All the women that work in our facilities. Without that childcare, the ladies would not be able to come to work. And those that do, there is the risk that the children are left in detrimental environments. We want to make sure that if women are coming to work, if women want to step forwards in their careers, that their children are also safe in that process. We're employed in Sri Lanka, where we have various projects going, and we also have over 1,000 people working in Mexico on the border with the US in Sonora, where we see today a lot of issues with refugees, people smuggling. We have to break that cycle. It's continued growth, but it will not grow without continued support. I'm a British entrepreneur. I've gone out into the world. I have faced machetes. I've had knives held to my throat. I've had death threats. Dangerous environments that I never thought I would be doing at 28 or 29 years old. Business is doing good, and good business is good for Britain. And I really, really believe in that. It has been a privilege as well to have DFID come to my facilities, and in particular Penny Mordaunt has every business of every size or scale is given the opportunity to showcase the work that they are doing, seek that support. The organisation almost $250 million. I didn't think it was possible, but we did it. A lot of people said to me today, I still am. But my future belief and my future desire is to take the business and put it into the hand. I have to see more businesses like Hella transition through will be a Sri Lankan, and they will be coming to Britain and continue hand in hand with international trade and take. So it's been a pleasure and an absolute privilege to share to you what I've done, why it's been possible, go as an organisation. Ken, more than an honour to show you around and show you the work that we are doing. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Dominic, for that inspiring story. And also thank you to all the other amazing British entrepreneurs out there. Now, you've probably heard of the Halo Trust. It's the world's largest humanitarian mine clearance organisation, saving lives and restoring communities threatened by landmines and other weapons of war. It's now my great pleasure to welcome to the stage their Chief Executive and former British Army officer, Major General James Cowan.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to say a few words about development and defence and the connection with the two of the biggest donors to overseas aid, the United States and Britain. As you just heard, I used to be a soldier. My regiment was the Black Watch, a short name with a long history. In 1963, the pipes and drums of the Black Watch toured America, playing famous venues such as Madison Square Garden. Their last concert was on the lawn of the White House in the presence of President Kennedy. A week later, the president was dead, and Jackie Kennedy requested that the Black Watch lead the funeral procession. The only non-American military unit ever to have taken part in a US state occasion. Some months later, in an effort to secure British support in Southeast Asia, Lyndon Johnson, recalling the funeral, asked Harold Wilson for the Black Watch. Wilson refused, and Britain played no part in the Vietnam War. In 2004, after a similar request from Bush to Blair, the Black Watch deployed to Iraq, Triangle of Death. At 1300 hours, on the 5th of November 2004, a car driven by an unshaven man with pale features approached a Black Watch checkpoint south of Fallujah, held by the Pipes and Drums platoon. He drove at an unremarkable speed, was seen to smile, and then detonated a suicide IED. The blast killed Sergeant Stuart Gray, Private Scott McCardle, and Private Paul Lowe. 8 soldiers were wounded. In peace, these men were outstanding pipers and drummers. In war, they were soldiers. The blast ripped the heart out of that band. It's hard to play without your hearing, your fingers, or your limbs. In 2015, I left the army to lead the Halo Trust, the world's biggest mine clearance organisation. Halo was founded by a Scottish soldier 30 years ago. We operate in 25 countries and employ 8,500 local people. These people would otherwise be destitute, displaced, or recruited by ISIS or the Taliban. Last year alone, 1.7 million people benefited from our work. Halo is an Anglo-American charity, meeting the humanitarian expectations of both countries, as well as our European and other global partners. Whatever you may have heard about cuts to aid, the truth is that the Trump administration has increased its spend on weapons removal to just over $300 million a year. So I'd like to acknowledge publicly that American support. This year, Halo's opened a program in Iraq. We're clearing improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, from around Fallujah, ironically, or perhaps appropriately, where I fought with the Black Watch in 2004. Unlike earlier wars fought largely in open country, the war in the Middle East has been focused on great cities like Fallujah, Ramadi, Aleppo, Mosul, and Raqqa, where booby traps proliferate and bombs lie buried in pancaked concrete buildings. Let me give you an idea of the scale of this problem. There are an estimated 8 million tons of conflict rubble in Mosul alone. That's 3 times the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. I don't need to labour the point that further conflict in the Middle East could easily bring terror back to the streets of Britain. Halo's addressing the problem of urban explosive contamination through use of British technology adapted from their other mining sector, mineral extraction, using crushers, sifters, and diggers. Penny Mordaunt's announcement of the Hope in Conflict Fund, a tech challenge to organisations around the world, is an opportunity to find new solutions to our work for people like Halo. Iraq is our newest operation, but Afghanistan is Halo's longest-running programme. An Afghan has led Halo there since the early 1990s. Of its 3,700 deminers, only 5 are expatriate staff. A few years after my time in Iraq, I commanded Task Force Hammond. In place of that very British, very military, and very expensive solution in Hammond, Halo presents a very Afghan and very affordable answer to the problem. Britain and the US have been long-standing supporters of mine action in Afghanistan and indeed globally. Over 10 years, DFID has funded the clearance of Herat province, benefiting 370,000 families. In Afghanistan, our deminers could have swollen the ranks of the Taliban. Instead, they've been given the dignity of a livelihood. Outputs such as these should silence the most vocal of aid critics, for it shows that aid is not only the right thing to do, it's also an investment in our national interest. Recently, Afghanistan has been clouded by violence. Despite this, in February, I hosted a visit by Ruth Davidson to Kabul. Now, Ruth, as some of you may have heard, is no shrinking violet, and I've rarely seen a happier face than when I let her blow up a landmine. But there are plenty of other women in this sector, and Halo has also hosted Priti Patel in February 2017 in Afghanistan, and Penny Mordaunt at our southern headquarters in Salisbury a few days after the last Novichok incident. The 0.7% of GDP that the UK commits to overseas aid is often a subject of controversy. Should be more spent on domestic priorities? Should more be spent on defence? There's only one great writer on war, Karl von Clausewitz. Now, Clausewitz, whose thesis centres on the trinity of people, army and state, he doesn't get much of a hearing in the aid world, I can tell you. Penny Mordaunt has described the 3 Ds of defence, diplomacy and development. This is the modern Clausewitzian trinity. As a mine clearance charity led by ex-soldiers, Halo sits at the junction of this trinity, now known in Whitehall as the fusion strategy. Halo is distinctive from other aid charities in that it's not simply giving aid to needy people, it's enabling people with training and leadership to help themselves. A good example of the fusion doctrine is the DFID-initiated new National Security Council strategy for Africa, which brings together aid and trade. NGOs and the military are sometimes wary of each other. Since we're both funded by the taxpayer, I don't think that's good enough. It's my belief that military support is required in countries where conflict still spills into the humanitarian space. In a world in which we face threats that are increasingly hybrid in nature, we surely need a fused response between military, agency, diplomatic, and non-governmental organisations. It would be easy to be overwhelmed by the scale of the reconstruction challenge in the Middle East. But it's worth remembering Mozambique. For 22 years, the United Kingdom supported mine clearance there, led by Halo. In 2015, Mozambique was declared mine-free. The UK recently committed £100 million to ridding the world of landmines. This took strategic vision, and I salute this government for making it possible. But if the UK helps consign landmines to the history books, what about the clearance of IEDs, bombs, rockets, small arms, and other ordnance from countries? Just as the US has done under successive administrations, I think it's time that the United Kingdom's aid budget was more focused on addressing these threats. So alongside the UK's Global Mine Action Programme, I'd like to see a global weapons reduction programme focused on countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, and Yemen. Such a fund might be available to NGOs such as Halo, employing ex-servicemen, or it might just as well be open to spare capacity in defence. I readily concede to having skin in this game, and my mind sometimes does return to that suicide IED in Iraq in 2004. But personal anecdote isn't a good enough reason to do something. There are 3 questions that should be answered. Is it in the national interest? Is there a humanitarian need? Can it be done? The short answer to all 3 is a resounding yes. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, James. And now we have a short video from the Halo Trust.
Angolans call this part of their country the land at the end of the earth, where the wind turns. Isolated, untouched, beautiful. But beneath the ground lie hundreds of thousands of landmines. Angola's brutal 27-year civil war ended in 2002. But for the people of this region, the presence of landmines is a continuing source of fear and trauma. Since 1994, the Halo Trust, or Hazardous Areas Life Support Organization, has been clearing landmines in Angola. They've cleared over 93,000 landmines, opened up 5,600 kilometers of safe road access, and educated over 500,000 people about the risks of mines and how to avoid them.
We use international funding to train local people to become skilled enough in order to clear their own land.
Porque na verdade as minas não só afetavam a população, mas também afetavam minha família, afetavam a mim mesmo.
But there is still work to do. There are at least another 500,000 landmines left in the ground. And to achieve the international goal of removing all landmines worldwide by 2025, the Halo Trust needs funding to increase their local demining staff.
We're the only people who can do this work at the scale we do it and as efficiently as we do it. There's still a job to do. It's not finished by a long shot.
Thank you. And now we have a short video from a member of the British Parliament who is leading the charge in the UK to tackle global pandemics, Nick Herbert MP.
Hi, I'm Nick Herbert. I've campaigned on tuberculosis since I first saw the problems 13 years ago when I visited Kenya. The needless loss of life from the world's deadliest infectious disease, which kills 1.6 million people a year, more than HIV, AIDS and malaria combined. I'm really proud of what UK aid is doing to help tackle this deadly disease, both in vaccine development and as the world's second largest contributor to the Global Fund to fight tuberculosis. It's a great use of taxpayer funds. Not only are we saving lives, but we're also doing something that's in our economic security, because we're warding off the threat of drug resistance in the future, which is a really serious risk, and we're recognizing that there's a huge economic drag on the world's economies from so many people dying and getting sick every year, when we need these economies to grow so that we can trade with them.
At the United Nations General Assembly last week in New York, Penny Mordaunt announced that UK aid will be dedicated to developing shorter, safer, and more effective treatments for TB. UK aid supports partners to develop and test a new TB vaccine. Early results show that the number of HIV-negative people developing TB was reduced by about half. And last week, the University of Oxford also announced its team of scientists and global experts have made a major breakthrough in the understanding of TB's genetic code. Their research has the potential to shape how TB is diagnosed in the future to make sure the right drugs are prescribed. Public Health England announced this week TB rates in England have dropped to the lowest level since 1990. This shows the power of science, so please join me in thanking our amazing British scientists. The next video will demonstrate the fantastic work our emergency services are doing both at home and around the world.
Hello, UK Search and Rescue!
Yeah, obviously.
Anybody hear me?
And what actually happened here? One voice, yours.
Landslide. It just took out the foundations of the building.
Okay.
Yeah. Most people speak English, yeah.
Okay.
We're working this on a fictional scenario based around a country called Mass. In Mass, there's been a huge storm where there has been infrastructure damage, including building collapses, landslides. All of the responders are trying to get to these people as quickly as they can. So we're trying to prepare our teams to manage that in the most effective way they can.
Nice deep breaths. Just calm down. We are going to help you. Okay.
That's excellent. That's it. That's nearly there.
Currently behind me there's a simulated landslide. There's been lots of sort of live casualties within the rubble pile that have needed our assistance. So it's been quite challenging. It's fantastic to be part of the UK ISAR team and to sort of fly the British flag and go overseas and helping these people who've been unfortunately affected by these disasters that do occur.
The UK Emergency Medical Team is set up to deploy overseas in post-emergency to save as many lives as possible as soon as possible. And we do this by working with the NHS, with the UK Fire and Rescue Service, with two NGOs, UK Med and Humanity and Inclusion, who provide rehabilitation services for us. Working together is really important for us, and it's events like these where we can test that working together and find ways of improving. Everyone is pitching in and making sure that this hospital, when it finally is deployed to an emergency, will be one of the best in the world, and people in the UK can be proud of that.
It's now my great pleasure to welcome the President of the Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland, who's been a leader in the global eradication of polio, Eve Conway.
Well, good afternoon, conference. Delighted to be here. Now, you may know Rotary for its firework displays and Santa sleighs, but did you know that we are about to make history thanks to more than 1.2 million Rotarians in over 200 countries and geographical regions around the world, including people where you live who go to your local Rotary Club? Because we're on the brink of an historic milestone, as we're not just this close, but we've never been closer to achieving Rotary's top goal of a polio-free world. So far this year, there have been just 18 cases of wild poliovirus in just 2 countries, 14 in Afghanistan and 4 in Pakistan. Now, when Rotary started our rather ambitious campaign to eradicate only the second human disease ever after smallpox, and that was back in 1985 we started that, there were 1,000 cases a day in 125 countries. Now, since 1988, we've spearheaded the campaign as a partner in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and more recently, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are matching every pound or dollar that Rotary raises to eradicate polio with another 2. Rotarians around the world have raised $1.9 billion and given countless hours of volunteering to help immunize over 2.5 billion children globally against polio. We've brought communities together through our Purple for Polio and Polio Now campaign to help us in the fight to eradicate this dreadful disease. But we can't do it alone. The UK government is the second largest donor government in the world after the United States, giving more than $1.6 billion to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. And 16 million people are walking today who would otherwise have been paralyzed by polio without this campaign. I mean, that's pretty amazing, isn't it, really? From the time that Liam Fox, in fact, will have spoken to you, that you've heard Liam Fox, to the time you will applaud Jeremy Hunt, we will have vaccinated 10,000 children. Working together, we are saving lives, but also keeping Britain safe. The last case of naturally occurring polio in the UK was back in 1984. But polio is still just a plane flight away. As long as one child remains infected, children in all countries are at risk of contracting polio, and the World Health Organization is warning that failure to eradicate polio from the last remaining strongholds could result in 200,000 new cases every year within 10 years all over the world. So we must continue until we really do drop to zero. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our Rotary volunteers and also to thank Penny Mordaunt and the British government for your support. Together we will make history and end polio now and forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eve. And I'd like to thank all of our amazing speakers today who have truly demonstrated the real value of UK aid and that Britain truly is a force for good in the world. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to highlight the great work that is taking place within the Conservative Party itself. For the last 10 years, Conservative Friends of International Development has organised a volunteering programme overseas. Each summer, a group of volunteers have gone to Africa, to Sierra Leone or Tanzania, and that's included members, councillors, MPs, members of the House of Lords and ministers. And this summer, our very own Development Secretary, Penny Mordaunt, came with us to Tanzania to help volunteer. I myself was a volunteer with the Conservative Party's Social Action Project, and it was this project that led me to set up the Coalition for Global Prosperity. And over the last 10 years, over 800 volunteers have joined the programme. And I wish to commend the Conservative Party for being the first political party to support this work. Finally, as Penny Mordaunt says, when asked why our nation and its citizens does so much for others, it is because this is what great nations do. And you know what? It makes me proud to be British. Thank you very much.
Conference, it is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce our next speaker to you. Members of my family fought in Burma in the Second World War, and at the Battle of the Somme in the First, and in other wars before that. I know from my family that our veterans have not always been treated with the respect that they deserve, and that their sacrifice has regrettably not always been rewarded by Labour. And now Labour stand ready to put our security at risk should they get into power. But I know the huge strides that our armed forces have made on this front as a result of the actions and decisions of our Secretary of State for Defence. It is remarkable the impact that he has had in such a short time, from improving veteran care, growing the cadet force, to standing up for British interests abroad against all comers. Not only is he a great minister, but he is a great advert for our party. And his Instagram account isn't too bad either. Conference, please welcome our Secretary of Defence, State for Defence, the Right Honourable Gavin Williamson.
Thanks ever so much. I really appreciate it. Tom, many thanks for that introduction. You are doing an excellent job as President of the National Convention, and you very much have my thanks. Conference, it's a great pleasure to be here in Birmingham. This city, with its great industrial past, has strong links with the Royal Navy, despite being 75 miles from the sea. 3 of our nation's great ships have proudly borne the name Birmingham. Those ships have won 5 battle honours, and today we continue that proud tradition. I'm pleased to announce that we will be naming one of our Type 26 global combat ships, HMS Birmingham. I inherited a Ministry of Defence that had been brilliantly manned by my predecessors, Liam Fox, Philip Hammond, and Sir Michael Fallon. My thanks goes to them for building such an effective force. Today, Mark Lancaster, Tobias Elwood, Stuart Andrew, Freddie Howe, and our PPSs, Will Quince, Jack Lepresti, and Trudy Harrison, are a fantastic defence team. And a special thanks must also go to Philip Dunn MP for the great work that he has done on doing a report about prosperity and defence and how important it is to this country. Since I joined the MOD in November, it's been quite a year. There have been ups and there have been downs. There have been times when I've spoken a little bluntly, but then us Yorkshire folk have never been known for our subtlety. But this year, There have been challenges abroad and at home, with our nation's enemies testing our preparedness and our resolve. When I visit the troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and around the world, I see firsthand the passion and commitment and dedication of our people. You cannot help but be in awe of the challenges they face, and we owe them a great debt. Today, I want to speak to you about caring for those people who have served, about the young people who've been inspired by our armed forces, and about what our armed forces are doing every single day to keep us safe at home. As Conservatives, we all believe that we should care for everyone in society, especially those who are most vulnerable. We want to look after all of those in the services, including those who suffer from chronic conditions, mental health issues, and disability. So today, I'm pleased to announce a new support network for them. We want the families and loved ones who support their partner in services to have every chance to succeed. So I'm pleased to announce a new scheme to help service personnel's partners find the jobs that they want. And alongside this, we'll provide more training and support and educational opportunities for the armed forces. And when the time comes for our people and they choose to move on, we will help them to continue to achieve their true potential. A new veterans transition policy will deliver this. We will help service leavers manage their finances, gain the right qualifications for the workplace, and help them find housing. We will set them up for success because they deserve it. And more than this, we want to celebrate everything that they have done to keep our families and communities safe. So we'll introduce the new Veterans ID card for all service leavers. It'll give them the recognition that they deserve and help them, if ever they need it, to seek support for health, housing, or work. Conference. This is about making sure we look after our service personnel from the moment they join, whilst they serve, and after they leave. As Conservatives, we understand that everyone should have the opportunity to succeed in life regardless of background or gender. If I can just tell you a little bit about what I mean. Recently, I went to a cadet unit in West Bromwich. The head teacher told me that the young people who had joined the cadets were at first reluctant to wear the naval uniforms at school. 2 weeks later, they were all proudly wearing their uniforms. They're proud to belong to something bigger than themselves. On Friday, visiting a local cadet unit here in Birmingham at Aston University Engineering Academy, the young cadet flight sergeant who showed me round said to me that being part of the cadets was about being part of a family. He was building friendships, gaining confidence, a sense of adventure and having fun. And thanks to the Conservatives in government, there are now 170 more cadet units and currently 43,000 cadets in schools. I want to build on this. I want to give even more young people the opportunity to join the cadets. So today I'm setting a new ambition to increase the number of cadets in our schools from 43,000 to 60,000 cadets. And each year we will celebrate our cadets with a new National Cadet Week. This will be a chance for us all to come together, to see everything our young people gain from the cadets. We teach them new skills that are vital for succeeding in today's world, where being savvy online and protecting against cyber attacks is essential. So I'm pleased to launch a new cyber security training program for our cadets. This program has been designed with GCHQ and the National Cyber Security Centre. 2,000 cadets a year will be trained in cyber security. Earlier today, I had a phone call from Brandon, and he said he would like a couple of places for people to be sent on it himself. But conference, we are doing this because we want to teach our young people the skills they need to succeed in today's world. This investment in cadets is an investment in the future of our young people, but equally, conference, is an investment in all of our futures. This Conservative Party understands the value of our armed forces more than any other party. It understands that it is they that keep us safe. We know that we have the very best in the world. They can react rapidly, taking the fight to the most capable of enemies, whether by land, sea, air, cyber, or space. They can deploy and use complex weapons, and they maintain the ultimate guarantee of our safety, the nuclear deterrent. Every day of every year, our armed forces are serving around the world, with 10,000 personnel on 30 different operations in 23 different countries, and over 20,000 of our people constantly held at high readiness. We're a leader in NATO, where we meet the pledge to spend a minimum of 2% of our GDP on defence. Earlier this year, it was thanks to the Royal Navy that Britain was the first nation to enforce United Nations maritime sanctions against North Korea. We have seen HMS Sutherland and HMS Argyll, alongside our allies, active in promoting global Britain, upholding the rules-based international order, and protecting our rights to sail in international waters in the South China Sea. For the first time this week, state-of-the-art Lightning jet fighters took off from the deck of HMS Queen Elizabeth, the world's most advanced aircraft carrier. Conference, it was our armed forces that cleaned up the nerve agent after the attack in Salisbury. And this Conservative Party understands the importance of our armed forces. That's why we launched the Modernising Defence Programme earlier this year, to make sure that our armed forces can protect us now and into the future. It's about having the right armed forces to protect your children, to protect my children, to protect our nation into the future. And that is why we will continue to invest. This year, we unveiled our new lethal, sophisticated jet fighter concept, Tempest. In March, the Prime Minister committed an extra £600 million to protect our nuclear deterrent. And we continue to invest in our Royal Navy and our Royal Marines. Combined, they have a glorious past, seemingly achieving the impossible. Whether that was seizing the Rock of Gibraltar over 300 years ago, or more recently, seizing the Al-Faw Peninsula in Iraq. To deliver the seemingly impossible, they need to be able to bring the fight from sea to land. As such, I'm happy to confirm that I will be protecting the vital landing platforms, HMS Albion and HMS Bulwark. We need them. We need them, the Royal Marines need them, in order to be able to continue to do what we ask of them to do. The armed forces protect our prosperity and our security. Something the leader of the opposition fails to understand. Think about it, conference. Which is the scarier thought? Trusting Jeremy Corbyn with your prosperity, or trusting Jeremy Corbyn with your security? Personally, I don't fancy either. Our forces give us so much. I don't know about you, but in July, I remember watching the fly past over London as the Royal Air Force celebrated its 100th year. Tens of thousands of people came to see it, but they also came out to say thank you. Thank you for everything that the Royal Air Force has continued to do in its 100-year history. It made us all feel so incredibly proud to be British. And this year on the 100th anniversary of the Great War, we should remember the sacrifice of those who have paid the ultimate price to give us the freedoms that we enjoy today. It was in the 1980s. In the 1980s, where Margaret Thatcher ignited the flame of freedom, liberty, and hope across Eastern Europe. Today, it is our duty to ensure that that flame continues to burn. We have always and will always stand by our friends and NATO allies, as they have so often stood with us in the face of increasing threats. We will not just talk about our values, but we as a nation will defend our values. And we will not let the Kremlin rewrite the outcome of the Cold War. But conference, let's be clear. The challenges that we face are growing. Iran is increasingly dangerous. North Korea has nuclear weapons. And there is a blurring of boundaries as our enemies operate in the grey zone with cyber attacks and fake news. One of the greatest threats that we face today is Russia. 2 weeks ago, I stood on the front line in Ukraine. I saw the devastation caused by Russian artillery shells and missiles as they tried to seize territory which is not theirs. Beyond Ukraine, in the Arctic and high north, Russia is increasing their military presence. As the ice melts, new shipping routes emerge and the significance of a region increases. As highlighted by my colleague Julian Lewis and the Defence Select Committee, we need to protect our national interests. Russia is increasing their military activity in the Arctic, with more submarines operating increasingly under the ice, with ambitions to build over 100 facilities in the Arctic, and with a reopening of old Soviet bases. To deal with this, we will be launching our new Defence Arctic strategy. Our Poseidon aircraft submarine hunters based in Lossiemouth will track Russian submarines. They'll keep us safe at home and assist our NATO allies. And we will step up our training with our Norwegian friends. With 800 Marines training each year in Norway, our submarines will be operating underneath the ice shelf in support of them. And the Royal Air Force will protect the skies over the Baltic and Iceland. It is our range of cutting-edge capabilities that makes Great Britain one of the world's leading military powers. Beyond the high north and Arctic, we must be ready to deal with the threats as they emerge. We're increasing our British points of presence around the globe. We will not close our key facilities in Germany. Instead, we'll keep them open and forward base army units there. This year, in the Gulf, we opened the first naval base east of Suez since the 1960s, and we will permanently base mine hunters and one of our frigates there. They are projecting British influence and protecting Britain's interests. They make us a truly global Britain. Conference. Conference, I am proud of the work that our armed forces do. They are world-leading and made up of inspiring men and women. Our armed forces have a proud history, protecting the values we hold so dear and of keeping us all safe. But we are at a crossroads. This is the time for us to step forward. We are proud of our nation's history. Now we must be confident of our nation's future. We are the party that understands that it is our armed forces who always give us so much, who represents our values as a nation, who never pause or hesitate to come to our defence when we need it most. So, Conference, we Conservatives prize our armed forces. They defend us, so we will defend them. They protect us, so we will protect them. It is the Conservative and Unionist Party that will give Great Britain the confidence, the belief, and the hope to take our nation to ever greater heights. It is us, it is all of us, who will build a great and global Britain. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure for me to be introducing our next speaker. He has been an outstanding servant of our party, the longest-serving Secretary of State for Health in history. He worked to project and improve one of the most important public services, including working alongside the Prime Minister to deliver a major funding boost to the NHS this year. He has now moved to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, where he is taking this message of a global Britain to allies around the world. He's been making the case for a fair deal for Britain in his whirlwind tour of European capitals across the summer. He has called out genocide in Burma and has been standing up for those arbitrarily detained abroad, as well as revealing some most impressive language skills on his recent visit to Japan. Importantly, he has ensured that we, as a party, make Great Britain a leader in upholding the rule of law, order, and democracy around the world, tackling terrorism and the behaviour of hostile states. Conference, please welcome our Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary, the Right Honourable Jeremy Hunt, MP.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Conference, and again, welcome to Birmingham. For the last 6 years, you've heard me speak as Health Secretary, one of the more demanding jobs in the Cabinet. However, I see you've decided not to let me off the hook by giving me the small matter of Brexit to deal with as Foreign Secretary, where I support Dom Raab. Of course, in the NHS, we'd have banned all this talk of cakes, cherries, and eating them as contributory factors for obesity. But it is Brexit I want to talk about today. How we can make it work, how we will make it work, not on a wing and a prayer, but whatever the outcome of the negotiations and what we need to do now to make that happen. But first, let me tell you about my first few moments as Foreign Secretary. In the summer, I met Madeleine Albright, who was President Clinton's Secretary of State. And she said to me, never forget what an honor it is to represent your country. So I want to start by thanking all of you for giving me that privilege and thanking Theresa May, our Prime Minister. The truth is, that's kind of applauding yourself and the right thing to do, but the truth is that nothing quite prepares you for the honor of being asked to be Foreign Secretary. I walked up the grand staircase, as it's called, in the Foreign Office. As you'd expect, a red carpet, and gazing down on me from the walls are the pictures of my distinguished predecessors. One of the more recent ones seemed to have forgotten to comb his blonde hair. At the time, I had just become the longest-serving Health Secretary, so I decided to look up who was the shortest-serving Foreign Secretary. It was not actually John Major, though he was only there for a short time. It was someone called Earl Temple, who was there in 1783 for just 4 days. So my first 4 days were critical. And in those 4 days, I actually met Angela Merkel. She gave me a wry German smile and said, "Congratulations, if that's the right word." I had a manly handshake with President Trump, but I soon realized that meeting world leaders abroad is peanuts compared to the diplomacy you need at home when you call your Chinese wife Japanese. I'm very lucky to have the best wife, and I'm very proud of you, darling. I also have a brilliant ministerial team, so let me introduce the band. The wise and wily Sir Alan Duncan, the sane and sage Alistair Burt, the diplomatic and energetic Mark Field, our principled defender of human rights, Tariq Ahmad, our passionate advocate for Africa, Harriet Baldwin, and my brilliant PPSs, James Cartledge and Vicky Ford. Let's give them a round of applause. Every one of them stands up for British values and British people all over the world. And one of those British people is Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. Along with other British citizens, Nazanin has been languishing for no reason in an Iranian jail for over 2 years, agonizingly separated from her 4-year-old daughter, Gabriella, and her husband, Richard. I too have a 4-year-old daughter, and I can't imagine what that family is going through. So let me repeat today to the Iranian government what I told actually their foreign minister just last week. Like Nazanin, you too have precious families. So whatever our disagreements, for the sake of our common humanity, it's time to let her and the others come home. Those predecessors, with their portraits on my wall, they helped shape our country for over 3 centuries. But this century will be shaped by something much bigger than the decisions made by any foreign secretary. Because it's going to be shaped by a decision made by the British people on the 23rd of June, 2016. Now, it's easy for others to misunderstand the Brexit vote. It was a decision to leave the European Union, but it wasn't a decision to pull up the drawbridge, to recreate the empire, or change our fundamental character as a gentle, generous, outward-looking people. In August, I visited a number of EU countries, including Latvia. I laid a wreath at the Latvian Freedom Monument. I realized that 30 years ago, that country was under Soviet occupation. Now, in a remarkable transformation, Latvia is a modern democracy, part of both NATO and the EU. And no European country did more to bring about that transformation than Britain. That wasn't us being un-European or anti-communitaire, and nor will Brexit be either. Our friends in Europe need to understand that 52% of the country aren't rabid populists trying to build Fortress Britain. We fought, as we heard from Gavin just now, we fought for peace on our continent, and none of us are ever going to turn our back on history. But nor, and I want to address our European friends directly now, nor should you turn your back on history either. At the moment, you, European friends, seem to think the way to keep the club together is to punish a member who leaves. Not just with economic disruption, but even by breaking up the United Kingdom with a border down the Irish Sea. Now, what happened to the confidence and ideals of the European dream? The EU was set up to protect freedom. It was the Soviet Union that stopped people leaving. And the lesson from history is clear. If you turn the EU club into a prison, the desire to get out of it won't diminish, it'll grow, and we won't be the only prisoner that will want to escape. If you reject the hand of friendship offered by our Prime Minister, you turn your back on the partnership that has given Europe more security, more freedom, more prosperity, more opportunities than ever before in our history. And a setback for the EU will become a wholly avoidable tragedy for Europe. And we understand, of course we understand, that the EU wants to, it needs to protect itself. But if the only way to deal with the UK leaving is to try to force its breakup, as someone much more distinguished than me once said, the answer is no, no, no. And I just want to say two more things to our friends. Punishing Britain for Brexit, this is the first one. Punishing Britain for Brexit is dealing with the symptoms of the problem and not the cause. And what is the cause? The cause is something that's happened across Europe. It's the failure of political elites in all the EU countries, including, I have to say, people like me in this country. It's our collective failure to deal with people's concerns about migration. That is the heart of the problem. And if you're worried about the EU's future, that is also the solution. And I want to say one more thing. Never, ever mistake British politeness for British weakness. If you put a country like Britain into a corner, we don't crumble, we fight. So as your friends of many years, we say very simply this: Brexit is not about whether you succeed or we succeed. Europe prospers when we both succeed, and it's time to change your approach. Staying the course when the going gets tough. I think any student of history would say that's more or less a definition of being British. But you do need to know where the course is set, what kind of country we want to be with our newfound independence. Now, in my office, there's a bust of Churchill. Just think for a moment about the international order that Churchill created. More democracies, more peace, more trade, more prosperity than ever before in history. I just want to give you one example. When I was born in 1966, half the world's population lived in extreme poverty. Now, there's actually a definition of extreme poverty. It's broadly people whose income is less than $1 a day. And that was about half the world. Now it's just 9% of the people in the world. So that incredibly successful international order is something we're all proud of, but it's starting to fray. Free trade is losing its luster, democracy in retreat, globalization, now a dirty word. At the same time, countries like Russia walk across the borders of Ukraine and Georgia as if they didn't exist, whilst their puppets in Syria use chemical weapons, the most horrific weapons you can imagine, to poison defenseless children. Now, we could, of course, leave it to others to deal with these global issues. We've got plenty of challenges of our own at home. We could be forgiven for pulling back. But that's not our way. Because Britain didn't just dream up the democratic world order. We shed blood with our friends and allies to build it, and we will always feel a special responsibility to defend it. And what we learned the hard way, what we really learned the tough way, is that you can only do that based on a position of strength. We actually learned it 80 years ago today, with an anniversary that probably we'd rather forget. 80 years ago today was when Neville Chamberlain returned from Munich with that infamous piece of white paper in his hand. He was a well-meaning man, trying his best, getting it badly wrong. No Conservative in this hall would ever make that mistake. But in fairness, nor would any Labour Prime Minister we've ever had. One of those Labour Prime Ministers, actually, to his great credit, set up NATO in 1949. But there is someone who would make that mistake. Because today's Labour Party is not the party of Attlee and Bevan, two men whose patriotism earned the lifelong respect of Winston Churchill. Today's Labour Party is run by the very extremists they spent their lives fighting. According to Jeremy Corbyn, NATO wasn't set up to keep us safe. It was set up to provoke a Cold War. Because Russia shares his anti-Western worldview, do you know, he couldn't even bring himself to condemn them for the first ever chemical weapons attack on British soil, because that's what happened in Salisbury this year. The people who did this aren't comrades, they're killers. And if Jeremy Corbyn won't stand up to bullies abroad, if he won't stand up even to bullies inside the Labour Party, then don't ever claim to stand up for ordinary people, because you won't. One person, of course, did stand up to Russian bullies. And I don't need to tell you who it was, because it was our Prime Minister, Theresa May. Thanks to her brave leadership, 153 Russian diplomats were expelled from 28 countries, inflicting massive damage on their spy networks. We're going to close the net on the GRU as well. Because under the Conservatives, Britain has a simple message for the Kremlin. If you try to intimidate this country, if you use chemical weapons, if you don't play by the international rules, then the price will always be too high. Last week in New York, I had dinner with perhaps the world's most experienced diplomat, Dr. Henry Kissinger. And Dr. Kissinger told me an interesting thing. He said that he was asked to write an article supporting Remain in the referendum campaign, but he refused. He said America and the world needed an independent British voice, and without Brexit, he worried there wouldn't be one. But an independent voice must be a confident voice, not blind optimism, but deep confidence rooted in the history of our nation. That means not overestimating our strengths, of course, but not underestimating them either. We may have less than 1% of the world's population, but we have the world's 5th biggest economy, the 3rd most generous development budget, the 2nd biggest military in NATO, 3 of the world's top 10 universities, more Nobel Prizes than anywhere in Europe, the world's financial center, and the world's language. But you know, the reason for our success, it goes beyond any of these things, or indeed anything tangible. It's because of a few simple ideas. Ideas that started here on this small island and went on to conquer every corner of the planet. One of those simple British ideas was free trade, a stroke of genius written into life by Adam Smith in Glasgow and exported across the seas by the Royal Navy. Another British idea was the fragile and beautiful insight that power should pass from leader to leader, not by force, but peacefully through a franchise expressing the will of the people. That was the long journey to parliamentary democracy that started with Magna Carta. Now, one of the best preserved copies of Magna Carta is in the cathedral in Salisbury. Somehow I don't think that's why Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Boshirov, those 2 famous tourists with the dodgy names, went there on the 3rd of March. And that's a great shame, because if they had, they could have taught their boss in the Kremlin a lesson or two about the dangers of absolute power. Another great British idea came from John Stuart Mill, who said, "Genius can only breathe in an atmosphere of freedom." Look how we British have used that freedom to unlock the secrets of gravity and evolution, to discover penicillin, decode DNA, pioneer the internet, to invent the NHS, which I was so privileged to steward. And why does all this matter? It matters because in a time of change, we can rightly feel confidence about the future of our country. Confidence. And confidence in our party too. Because in challenging times, it's nearly always our party, the Conservative Party, the British people turn to. Not always, in fairness, because they like us, alas, but because they trust us. They trust us to do the right thing. And one of the things they're trusting us to get right is Brexit. And that means, of course, the right trade deal. And we all know that all trade agreements involve compromise because both sides limit their freedom of maneuver, so both benefit from removing barriers. But important though trade deals are, our future actually depends far more on other things. In particular, our ambition and our hunger to succeed. And that's why I come back to confidence. Because if we are going to show the world that confident Britain, we have got to unite our country. And we've got to unite it behind a big, bold vision of what our newfound independence can mean. And that means putting our energy into what can happen, not arguing about what did happen. It means remembering a few things that only we really understand as the party of wealth creation, that for every one job affected by a trade deal, 10 jobs will be determined by new technology. Because Conservatives understand that our success will be determined not by our bureaucrats, but by our businesses. Whether we have a British Google, a British Amazon, a British BMW, whether we have not just HS2 up here to Birmingham, but HS3, HS4, whether on our phones we have not just 3G or 4G, but 5G or 6G. In short, whether the party of aspiration can build a country of ambition. And that means a post-Brexit world where we look to no one but ourselves for our success. And if we do that, we can turn a simple legal change into a catalyst for profound transformation. And of course, we have to unite the country. But we can only unite the country if we're united ourselves, in Parliament, in the government, in the cabinet. And to unite the country, that means we have to deliver not just a true Brexit for the 52%, but also a generous Brexit for the 48%. They are patriots too. So however fierce the debate, however high the passions, let us never forget that disunity and division won't give us a better Brexit, but it may give us the wrong Brexit. It may give us a Corbyn Brexit. It may give us no Brexit at all. So let's argue our corners this week in Birmingham. But let's not carry on the fight after the moment we needed to come together. Let's remember in our great British history, the right thing has often happened, but it never happened by accident. It happened when brave leaders took principled decisions. It happened when our talents come together. It happens when we draw on the strengths of our past to chart a route to the future. Let me say that again. It happens when we draw on the strengths of our past to chart a route to the future, because that is the essence of conservatism. So, conference, let's find the common purpose and sense of destiny we need in this great, great endeavour as a party, as a people, as a nation. Let's bring others together as we come together ourselves, and once again show the doubters, show the skeptics, show the world the true potential of this remarkable nation. Thank you.